Dr. Benjamin Park adjusted his tie for the third time, sitting in the corner booth of Sacred Heart Hospital's cafeteria. It was 7:45 p.m. on New Year's Eve, and the place was nearly empty except for a few nurses grabbing late dinners and one janitor mopping the floors. Benjamin had specifically chosen this spot because it was quiet, romantic in its own sterile way, and most importantly, it was neutral ground. His colleague, Dr. Patricia Wells, had promised him that Jessica Hartwell was perfect for him. A museum curator, she had said. Sophisticated, loves classical music, and never misses a charity gala. Benjamin checked his phone again. No messages. No calls. Nothing. The watchful eyes. Nina Torres wiped down the counter behind the food station, watching the well-dressed man in the corner with growing concern. She had worked at Sacred Heart's cafeteria for 4 years, and she knew every doctor, nurse, and staff member by face if not by name. This particular surgeon was Dr. Park, the cardiovascular specialist everyone called the miracle worker. She had seen him countless times, always rushing through with a coffee, barely stopping to breathe. But tonight was different. Tonight, he looked almost human. Almost vulnerable. He kept glancing at the entrance, his knee bouncing under the table. Nina recognized that look. She had worn it herself too many times to count. Breaking the ice. At 8:30 p.m., Nina couldn't stand it anymore. She grabbed a fresh pot of coffee and walked over to his table. "Refill?" she asked, already pouring before he could answer. Benjamin looked up, startled. "Oh, thank you." His voice was tired. Nina tilted her head, studying him. "You know, I've been working here for 4 years, and I've never seen you sit down for more than 5 minutes. Tonight, you've been here for almost an hour. Either you've discovered the secret joy of hospital cafeteria ambience, or someone stood you up." Benjamin's eyes widened. "Is it that obvious? The truth comes out." Nina slid into the seat across from him without asking permission. "Listen, I'm not supposed to sit with customers, but my supervisor went home early for New Year's, and honestly, you look like you need someone to talk to more than you need cafeteria regulations." She extended her hand. Nina Torres. Professional food server and amateur therapist. Benjamin shook her hand, a small smile breaking through his serious expression. Benjamin Park. Professional heart surgeon and apparently, professional person who gets stood up on New Year's Eve. Nina winced sympathetically. Ouch. New Year's Eve? That's cold. That's like, Arctic-level cold. What happened? The blind date disaster. Benjamin sighed heavily, running his hand through his perfectly combed hair, messing it up. Blind date. My colleague set it up. She said this woman, Jessica, was perfect for me. We were supposed to meet at 7:30. I've called 4 times. Nothing. Nina leaned back, crossing her arms. 4 times? After the second call, you should have ordered dessert and moved on with your life. That's the 2-call rule. Benjamin raised an eyebrow. There's a rule? Nina nodded seriously. Absolutely. 1 call means maybe they're stuck in traffic. 2 calls means they're either dead or not interested. And since the hospital would have heard about any major accidents tonight, I'm betting on not interested. Getting comfortable. Benjamin found himself laughing, something he hadn't done in weeks. You're very direct. Nina shrugged. Life's too short to dance around the truth. Besides, doctors appreciate directness, right? You don't tell a patient, well, maybe possibly there could be something potentially wrong with your heart. You just tell them what's up. Benjamin nodded. Fair point. He looked at her properly for the first time. She had warm brown eyes that sparkled when she smiled, curly black hair pulled back in a ponytail, and a small scar above her left eyebrow. She wore the standard cafeteria uniform, but somehow made it look comfortable rather than institutional. So, what's a heart surgeon doing going on blind dates anyway? Nina asked. You seem like the type who'd have women lining up. The lonely life. Benjamin laughed bitterly. You'd think so, but surgery doesn't leave much time for dating. I work 70 to 80 hours a week. I'm on call most nights. My last relationship ended because I missed our anniversary dinner to perform an emergency bypass. She said I loved my patients more than I loved her. Nina's expression softened. Did you? Benjamin thought about it. Maybe. I don't know. I just know that when someone's life is on the line, nothing else seems to matter. Does that make me a bad person? Nina shook her head. No, it makes you a person who cares. There's a difference. But it also makes you lonely, doesn't it? Unexpected honesty. The question hit Benjamin harder than he expected. He looked down at his untouched water glass. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Especially during holidays. Everyone's celebrating with family, with partners, with friends. And I'm either in the operating room or sitting alone in my apartment watching other people's lives through my window. Nina was quiet for a moment. I get that. Different reasons, but I get it. I moved to this city 5 years ago to chase a dream that didn't work out. Most of my friends moved away. My family's 3 states over. New Year's Eve used to be my favorite holiday, and now it just reminds me of everything I don't have. Benjamin looked at her with new understanding. What was the dream? Sharing stories. Nina smiled sadly. I wanted to be a chef. Went to culinary school and everything. Had this whole plan to open my own restaurant. But then life happened. My mom got sick, medical bills piled up, and suddenly culinary school became too expensive. So here I am, serving food instead of creating it. Benjamin felt a pang of sympathy. I'm sorry. Nina waved her hand dismissively. Don't be. I'm not looking for pity. I'm just saying, we all have our disappointments. Yours is sitting here on New Year's Eve waiting for someone who doesn't value your time. Mine is wearing this uniform instead of a chef's coat. But you know what? She leaned forward, her eyes intense. We're still here. We're still breathing. And the night's not over yet. The turning point. Benjamin found himself smiling genuinely. You're right. You're absolutely right. He looked around the nearly empty cafeteria. So, what do you suggest? How does one salvage New Year's Eve after being stood up? Nina grinned mischievously. Well, first, you stop checking your phone every 30 seconds. That Jessica person doesn't deserve that much attention. Second, you let me make you something that's not on the menu. Something actually good. Benjamin raised his eyebrows. You can do that? Nina stood up, straightening her uniform. Dr. Park, I've been working in this cafeteria for 4 years. I know every ingredient in that kitchen, and I know how to make magic happen even with hospital-grade supplies. Trust me? A small beginning. Benjamin looked at this woman who had appeared out of nowhere and somehow made his terrible evening feel bearable. You know what? I trust you. Nina's smile could have lit up the entire hospital. Good answer, doctor. Now sit tight. I'm about to show you that hospital food doesn't have to taste like sadness. As she walked back toward the kitchen, Benjamin realized he hadn't thought about Jessica in the last 20 minutes. For the first time all evening, he wasn't checking his phone or feeling sorry for himself. Instead, he was curious about what this cafeteria worker with dreams of being a chef would create, and even more curious about the person behind the bright smile and the honest words. Nina pushed through the swinging kitchen doors with the confidence of someone who owned the place. The night cook, an older man named Jerry, looked up from his crossword puzzle. Nina, what are you doing back here? I thought your shift ended at 8. Nina grabbed an apron. Change of plans, Jerry. We have a guest who needs something special. Mind if I use the kitchen? Jerry chuckled. As long as you clean up, be my guest. It's New Year's Eve. Do something crazy. Nina started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator, her mind already planning. She had noticed the way Benjamin's shoulders slumped, the way his expensive watch contrasted with his defeated posture. This man saved lives every day but couldn't save himself from loneliness. Creating something beautiful. She found fresh pasta that was meant for tomorrow's lunch service, good olive oil, garlic, cherry tomatoes, and fresh basil someone had brought in from their garden. Not the fancy ingredients she had dreamed of using in her own restaurant, but enough to make something real. Something that tasted like care. As she worked, dicing garlic and warming the olive oil, Nina thought about her own failed dreams. Culinary school had been the happiest time of her life. She had felt alive in those kitchens, creating dishes that made people smile. Then her mother's cancer diagnosis came, and everything changed. The hospital bills were crushing. Her younger brother needed help with college. Her dreams got folded up and put away in a drawer she rarely opened anymore. The emergency call. Benjamin was scrolling through his phone, not looking at messages from Jessica but instead reading medical journals, when his pager went off. The sharp beeping sound cut through the quiet cafeteria. He looked at the screen and his stomach dropped. Code blue, cardiac wing, room 412. He stood immediately, his training overriding everything else. Nina emerged from the kitchen carrying a beautifully plated dish just in time to see him rushing toward the door. Benjamin, she called out. He turned, conflict written across his face. I'm sorry, I have to go. Emergency. Nina nodded, understanding immediately. Go save someone's life. I'll keep this warm. He hesitated for just a moment. Will you still be here? Nina smiled. It's New Year's Eve, and I've got nowhere else to be. Go. The long wait. Nina watched him disappear down the corridor, his dress shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. She returned to the kitchen and covered the pasta, keeping it warm. Jerry had already left, leaving her alone with the humming refrigerators and the distant sounds of the hospital. She could have gone home. Her small apartment was only a 20-minute bus ride away. But something made her stay. She cleaned the kitchen thoroughly, wiped down all the counters, and then sat in the same booth where Benjamin had been sitting, watching the clock tick toward midnight. At 10:47 p.m., she texted her best friend Ruby, still at work. Long story. Happy New Year. Ruby replied immediately, girl, you better be getting overtime or meeting a cute guy. Nina smiled at her phone but didn't respond. The return. At 11:53 p.m., Benjamin pushed through the cafeteria doors, looking exhausted. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, and there was a small blood stain on his white shirt cuff. But his eyes were bright. Nina stood up immediately. How did it go? Benjamin let out a long breath. Touch and go for a while. 68-year-old man, massive heart attack. But we stabilized him. He's going to make it. Nina felt her own heart swell with an emotion she couldn't quite name. That's incredible. Benjamin walked over to the booth, practically falling into the seat. I'm sorry. I know it's almost midnight and you probably want to get home. Nina disappeared into the kitchen and returned with the reheated pasta, still steaming. Actually, I thought we could watch the new year come in together. If you want. Midnight conversation. Benjamin looked at the plate in front of him, and then at Nina. You waited. Nina sat across from him. I told you I would. He picked up his fork and took a bite. His eyes widened. This is amazing. This tastes like something from a real restaurant. Nina blushed with pleasure. That's because it's made by someone who actually cares about food, not just about serving it. They ate together, talking easily now. Benjamin told her about the surgery, the delicate work of repairing a damaged heart, the rush of adrenaline when the patient's heartbeat stabilized. Nina told him about her culinary school days, the first time she made a perfect soufflé, the dream of opening a small neighborhood restaurant where everyone would feel at home. The countdown. At 11:58 p.m., Nina turned on the small television mounted in the corner of the cafeteria. The New Year's Eve celebration in Times Square filled the screen, thousands of people celebrating together. 2 minutes, Nina said softly. Benjamin looked at her across the table. Nina, can I ask you something? She met his eyes. Sure. He hesitated, then spoke. Why did you stay? You don't know me. I'm just another doctor who comes through here. Nina thought about her answer carefully. Because you looked like I've felt for the past 3 years. Lost. Like you're doing everything right but somehow ending up in the wrong place. And because nobody should be alone on New Year's Eve, especially not someone who spent their night saving someone else's life. The new year begins. The countdown began on the television. 10, 9, 8. Benjamin reached across the table and took Nina's hand. 7, 6, 5. She didn't pull away. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year, they said together as the clock struck midnight. Fireworks exploded on the screen, but Benjamin was looking at Nina. Thank you for tonight. For staying. For the food. For the company. Nina squeezed his hand. Thank you for letting me stay. They sat there in the quiet cafeteria, hands still touching across the table, while the rest of the world celebrated. Neither of them knew what would happen next, but for the first time in years, both of them felt like maybe, just maybe, they weren't quite so alone anymore. The morning after. Benjamin didn't leave until 2 in the morning. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories about their childhoods, their disappointments, their secret hopes. When he finally stood to go, he turned back at the door. Can I come back tomorrow? Nina smiled. I work the breakfast shift. 6 a.m. Benjamin grinned. I'll be here at 6:15. As Nina watched him leave, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe her story wasn't over yet. That maybe the best chapters were still waiting to be written. She cleaned up the last of the dishes, turned off the lights, and headed home under a sky full of stars, welcoming the new year with a lightness in her heart she had almost forgotten was possible. Benjamin kept his word. At 6:15 a.m. on New Year's Day, he walked into the hospital cafeteria wearing scrubs and carrying 2 cups of expensive coffee from the shop across the street. Nina was refilling the breakfast buffet when she saw him, and her face broke into a surprised smile. You actually came. Benjamin set down the coffees. I'm a man of my word. For the next week, it became their routine. Benjamin would stop by during his breaks, sometimes for just 5 minutes, sometimes for half an hour. They would talk about their days, share small moments, and slowly, carefully, begin to know each other beyond that first magical night. The wise patient. On January 5th, Benjamin was making his rounds when he stopped at room 412, the room of Mr. Frank Morrison, the patient he had saved on New Year's Eve. The elderly man was sitting up in bed, looking much stronger. Dr. Park, sit down for a moment, Frank said, patting the chair beside his bed. Benjamin sat, checking his watch. He had 10 minutes before his next surgery. Frank smiled knowingly. You've got that look, son. Benjamin frowned. What look? Frank chuckled. The look of a man who's found something precious but doesn't know what to do with it. I've been married for 46 years. I recognize that look. The confession. Benjamin felt his defenses crumble. There's someone. A woman who works in the cafeteria. We've been talking all week, and I can't stop thinking about her. But I don't know if I should pursue it. My schedule is impossible, my life is complicated, and she deserves better than someone who might get called away at any moment. Frank shook his head firmly. Son, you saved my life. You gave me more time with my wife, my grandchildren. You know what I learned from almost dying? Benjamin waited. That time is all we have. And wasting it because you're scared of complications is the biggest mistake you can make. If you care about this woman, tell her. Life's too short for maybes. The courage to ask. That afternoon, Benjamin found Nina during her break. She was sitting outside the cafeteria, eating a sandwich and reading a cookbook. He sat down beside her, his heart pounding harder than it did before major surgeries. Nina, can we talk? She closed her book, sensing something important. Of course. Benjamin took a deep breath. I know we've only known each other for a week. I know my schedule is crazy and I'm not the easiest person to be with. But I need to ask you something, and I need to be honest about it. Nina's heart raced. Okay. The perfect question. Benjamin looked directly into her eyes. Would you go on a real date with me? Not in the hospital cafeteria, not grabbing 5 minutes between shifts. A real date where I pick you up, take you somewhere nice, and we spend an evening together without pagers or work or any interruptions. Nina felt tears prick her eyes. Benjamin, you don't have to do this because you feel obligated. That night on New Year's Eve, I didn't stay because I expected anything. Benjamin took her hand. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I'm asking. You stayed because you're kind, because you saw someone who needed a friend, and you gave that freely. But Nina, I don't want to just be your friend. I want to take you to dinner. I want to hear more about your dreams. I want to know everything about you. The answer. Nina smiled through happy tears. Yes. Yes, I would love to go on a date with you. Benjamin's face lit up with pure joy. Really? Nina laughed. Really? But I have one condition. Benjamin looked nervous. What's that? Nina squeezed his hand. You have to let me cook for you. A real meal, not cafeteria food. Let me show you what I can really do in a kitchen. Benjamin grinned. That sounds perfect. When? Nina thought for a moment. Saturday night. My apartment. 7 o'clock. And Benjamin? He looked at her expectantly. Don't be late. Benjamin laughed. I promise. Even if I have to put another surgeon on call, I will be there at 7. The new beginning. Saturday came, and Benjamin showed up at Nina's apartment at exactly 6:55 p.m., carrying flowers and a bottle of wine. Nina's small apartment smelled incredible. She had spent the entire day preparing, making fresh pasta from scratch, creating a sauce that had simmered for hours, baking bread that filled the air with warmth. When she opened the door, Benjamin's breath caught. She was wearing a simple blue dress, her hair down around her shoulders, and she looked absolutely beautiful. They spent the evening talking, laughing, sharing stories. Nina's cooking was extraordinary, every bite filled with love and skill. Benjamin told her about his childhood, about choosing medicine because he wanted to help people. Nina shared her dreams of someday opening that restaurant, of creating a place where people felt at home. The promise. As the evening ended, they stood at Nina's door. Benjamin took her hands in his. Nina, I don't know where this is going. I don't know if I'll be the perfect boyfriend or if my schedule will drive you crazy. But I do know that meeting you was the best thing that's happened to me in years. And I want to see where this goes. Nina looked up at him. Benjamin, I don't need perfect. I just need honest. I need someone who shows up, who tries, who cares. And you've already proven you're that person. Benjamin smiled and leaned down, kissing her softly. When they pulled apart, Nina whispered, "Thank you for being late to that blind date." Benjamin laughed. "Thank you for noticing me sitting alone." As he walked to his car, Benjamin realized something profound. Sometimes the best things in life happen when your plans fall apart. Sometimes getting stood up leads you exactly where you're meant to be.